Hello everyone, welcome back for another lesson. In this lesson, we will talk about the law of segregation of alleles, and I will show you how to predict what the outcome would be if you cross two individuals through sexual reproduction. So we will be using simple Punnett squares to do this. So what is the law of segregation of alleles? Well, when you have sexual reproduction, the male will produce sperm cells and the female will produce eggs. Now, because, for example, for humans, we have 23 chromosomes each, not all chromosomes get transferred to the offspring. Only half of the genetic code get used. So what's going to happen is that you're going to have, let's say we take the paternal chromosome, you're going to have the chromosome that will split in two, and only half of it will be basically turned into a sperm cell. So this half would go into a sperm cell and this half would go into a different sperm cell. Same thing for the female chromosomes. So half the chromosome would go into an egg, half of the chromosome would go into another egg. So you have an illustration here. You have the father that has two different alleles for the same gene, so capital A, dominant, and lowercase a, which is recessive. So one of these alleles, one of these chromosomes will end up in one sperm cell, and the other half of the chromosome will end up in another sperm cell. So there's two different possibilities in this case of whatever genetic material will be passed on to his offspring. Same thing for the mother. She's also a heterozygous individual, so she has two different alleles, capital A, lowercase a. So one of these alleles will end up in an egg, and the other one of the alleles, or the other half of the chromosome, will end up in another egg. Okay, so those are the two possibilities for the mother. Now, which egg and which sperm cell will end up fusing together, we don't know. So that's why we do probabilities. What are the various possibilities? Well, this one could combine with this one, or this one could combine with this one, or this sperm cell could combine with this egg, or this sperm cell could combine with that egg. Okay, so there's various possibilities. So you can get actually 4 different individuals based on the different possibilities. One that will be capital A, another one could be capital A, lowercase a, another one could be lowercase a, capital A, and the fourth possibility is lowercase a, lowercase a. So this is a little bit disorganized. So in order to create these probabilities, we use what we call a Punnett square. Okay, so this is how we actually work it out in a more structured way. So how do we determine genotypes and phenotypes? Okay, so if you remember genotypes, it's the genes that are passed on. Phenotypes, it's the outcome. What actual physical traits do we observe based on the genotype? So let me walk you through this. So we have a little situation here. If a homozygous black guinea pig crossed with a heterozygous black guinea pig, what would be the genotypes and phenotypes of their offspring? So if it's a homozygous black, homozygous means we have the same allele twice. Okay, now here we have a key. Black is the dominant gene. So because it's a dominant gene, we'll use capital B as a letter, right? So if it's homozygous black, that means it has to be the same letter and it has to be capital B, because it's a dominant trait. Now that one is crossed with a heterozygous black. Heterozygous means there'll be one capital, one lowercase. In other words, one dominant, one recessive trait. So if it's heterozygous, automatically there'll be, like I said, capital and lowercase. So we are crossing. The X stands for the fact that we're crossing one with the other. Now, in the law of segregation of alleles, it says that these alleles will split to form, this is not a good color. Pick another color. Oops. Let me pick blue. So these will split to form 2 different reproductive cells, either capital B or capital B. So we're going to put them here at the top of our Punnett square. Okay, so this is a Punnett square. I will explain the other details in a second. Now for the other individual, these 2 alleles will split and produce two different gametes, or reproductive cells, or eggs in this case. So capital B and lowercase b. So one is capital B, one is lowercase b. So on the side, we put the female gametes, and on top, we put the male gametes. It doesn't matter which one you put where. One parent is on the side, one parent is at the top. I think as a standard, normally the female goes here and the male goes here, but in the end, it's not the end of the world if you reverse them. As long as you put the same gametes for the same individual on the same side. Okay, so now we do the crossover. So B with B. So capital B, capital B. Capital B, capital B. So we fill this out, right? Capital B, capital B. We have capital B, lowercase b, capital B, lowercase b. Okay, so these are the four possibilities, the four offspring we could possibly get if these two individuals are crossed together, if they have sexual reproduction. So what is the genotype of the offspring of the first generation? Well, we have 50% that are capital B, right? Half of them. And we have 50% that are capital B, lowercase b, right? So 50% capital B, 50% lowercase b, capital B. Now, what does this translate into? Well, we know that if there's a capital B, automatically this means the individual has the dominant trait. And this dominant trait is black. So all individuals would have the color black because they all have a capital B in their genotype. So it translates into 100% of guinea pigs of the offspring of F1, what we call F1, the first generation. So 100% would be black. So as you can see, the genotypes don't translate directly into a phenotype perfectly. We had 50-50, but we end up with 100% of black guinea pigs. Okay? So that's how it works. That's how we work a Punnett square. So I'll do an example with you to wrap this up, an actual example that we're going to work together. So if you want, you can take a piece of paper and reproduce this, and we'll walk through the steps together. So maybe you want to pause this, draw your Punnett square, and then resume the video, and we'll do this together. So the problem says, in dogs, the gene for fur color has two alleles. The dominant allele, capital G, codes for gray, right? The dominant trait being gray, we're going to use G for to represent this allele. And the recessive allele, lowercase g, codes for black fur. The female dog is heterozygous. The male dog is homozygous recessive. Figure out the percentage or ratio of possible phenotypes and genotypes of their puppies by using a Punnett square. Okay, so let's take this one step at a time. What is the dominant gene? We said that the dominant gene was gray, which we're going to represent by capital G. The recessive gene is lowercase g for black, okay, which means black, and this means gray. What is the female's genotype? She's a heterozygous individual. So that means automatically, because she is heterozygous, she has one of each allele. So she has to be capital G, small g. And the male's genotype, he's a homozygous. Now, it's specified that it's recessive. So that means we have to have the same letter twice, but because he's recessive, it has to be lowercase g, lowercase g. So if we split the gametes, I will put the female on the side here. So she could have an egg that contains capital G, or she could have an egg that contains small g, lowercase g. For the male, he could have a sperm cell with lowercase g or a sperm cell with lowercase g because he's a homozygous. So if we do the crossing, we're going to get capital G, small g, small g, small g, right? We go like this and this. Over here, capital G, lowercase g, and lowercase g, lowercase g. So the phenotypes, out of 4, I have 0 out of 4, or 0%, that are capital G, capital G. Capital G, lowercase g, I have 2 on 4, or I have 50%. Don't forget the question was asking you to express this as a percentage, these numbers as percentages. Lowercase g, I have 2 out of 4, so I have 50% that will be recessive homozygous. What does this translate into in terms of phenotype? So how many will have gray fur? To have gray fur, you need to have a capital letter. We don't have any over here. We have 50% over here. So 50% will be gray. And how many will be black? These would be black. You need recessive, recessive to be black. So we'll have 50% that are black. And that's how you work out a problem using a Punnett square. A simple one, that is. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about another rule, and we're going to look at more complex Punnett squares where we cross 2 genes at the same time. So for now, if you have questions about simple Punnett squares, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I will see you around for your next lesson. And until then, take care.